Well, if you're in the Salt Lake City area or in Provo, Utah, you may recognize that. I, as a Colorado State fan, will remember we've heard that more times. The band got tired of playing it when you go against Colorado State Rams on a Saturday afternoon back in the early 1980s. I was a part of that. Our guest today is as well, but for the different sport, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You're watching Take 5 with Steven Travers. Hi again, everybody. I'm Harper LeBel. Welcome to the show. We appreciate it. And you're watching 100 Yards of Football. Steven, today we've got a guest that goes back in your history quite a long ways, maybe early and often. I tease in that I say that in some respects, Ken Clayton may have injured your neck in one way, shape, or form because he hit a couple of bombs off you and you had to twist and turn to find that baseball so quickly that it might have caused some injury. But thank you for getting through that, for healing up, and inviting Ken Clayton to be on the show today.
Yes, time heals all wounds. Let's say that Ken Clayton was my opponent, and then Ken Clayton was my teammate. And it was far more enjoyable to have Ken Clayton as your teammate than have Ken Clayton as your opponent. He was a Paul Bunyan in the Rocky Mountains. He was Mark McGuire before Mark McGuire, a big, huge, powerful, home run hitting BYU Cougar. He's my friend, my former teammate, Ken Clayton. I want to welcome you to Take 5 with Steven Travers. Thank you.
Well, Steven, thanks for inviting me on. I got scared to death when you offered this to me because I've never done a podcast before, but I do remember our times together, and we'll always chat and talk about those good times. So I'm interested to hear your view of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, this show is all about nostalgia and going back in my life and talking about the things that Harper and I have seen growing up, and we're all pretty much of the same vintage. Maybe you and I are a little bit older than Harper, but it's not that much difference. And, the times were different then, but they were interesting. And so those are the things we talk about on this show, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Great.
Well, Ken, appreciate you being on, and thank you for joining us. Let's begin. You're a Salt Lake City, Utah guy, born and raised, right? You're there now, yes. And you were born and raised. Let's just talk a little bit about how baseball for you became a part of your life. Everyone would think, well, you're in the Wasatch Mountains, so you're an expert skier. You can downhill as good as Franz Klammer or any of the great Billy Johnson. I think Bill Johnson was the name of the American skier that won the Alpine a few years ago. But, I would think that you would be born with skates or skis on your feet, but instead you kind of lean towards baseball. Talk a little bit about that.
That's funny you talk about the skates or skis because I was always real good at any athletics that didn't involve skates or skis. In high school, I played basketball and baseball. I was the biggest kid in school as a sophomore, but when we were younger, they did everything football-wise by weight, and I was 50 pounds over the weight limit. Oh. In fact, so speaking Paul Bunyan, when I was in sixth grade, I was the bat boy for the AAA club for the Angels. And they had a team photo at the end of the year, and I was the sixth biggest player on the team. So size was always there, but I just always loved playing basketball and baseball, and I got a great upbringing through it. Through junior high and high school, I got to be the clubhouse boy for the Angels or the visiting teams. And so I was around baseball every summer, and it was just a blast. Now, one thing that, growing up with baseball here in Utah, you're really at a disadvantage compared to these people from California and Arizona and Texas on all these warmer places because we didn't have outdoor baseball for half the season or half the year.
Yeah.
So, but we did the best we could, and I was lucky enough to have some good years at BYU and then a couple years of minor league ball, which were a lot of fun.
Well, you mentioned you're 6'5". You're a big guy, and you were 50 pounds bigger and heavier than some of the other kids of the same age, so you always had to play up. There's a couple of questions I want to ask Sarah, if you don't mind. First and foremost, mom and dad big? You got big brothers and sisters? Was grandpa and grandpa big, or did you get that one gene in you that, or did you get dropped on your head like so many of us do? And we're the freaks, and we're so much bigger than the rest of the family. It doesn't make any sense in the picture, but everybody else goes, yeah, right, it's okay.
we're a bigger family, but I was definitely the biggest. My dad played football at Rutgers in college. Didn't have my height. I'm 6'5". He was 6 feet tall. Mom was 5'10", and she was a swimmer. So I got some lucky genes there.
Yeah. Brothers and sisters?
5 kids in our family. I'm the biggest. My brother played a couple years of baseball at Snow College, could hit the ball a lot further than I could. He was a left-hander, so he had that sweet lefty swing that I was always very jealous of. And I was more of a line drive hitter, in fact, because Steve talks about the home runs. But my freshman year at BYU, I dove for a ball on the AstroTurf and just destroyed my shoulder. Ooh. And I had to change my hitting style for the rest of my career because I couldn't pull inside pitches. So I just stepped more off the plate, and I was lucky that playing at altitude at BYU, the ball got to fly out of the ballpark a lot easier.
Yeah, no kidding. What is the altitude in Provo? Is that above 6,000?
No. It's about 4,600.
Okay, gotcha. Well, playing in the Western Athletic Conference back then, and we'll get into that a little bit. Going to Air Force or Wyoming, that was another place where you didn't really have to hit the ball that hard. Just get it in the air and it's gone.
Well, it's funny because of the opposite end of the spectrum. You've got going down to California and playing, and growing up here in Utah, we never really got the chances, and they didn't have travel teams and stuff. So, I mean, I remember freshman year going down to Fresno State and hitting what I thought I would crush the ball to center field, and I'm jogging down to first base, and the ball bounces off the top of the fence. I had to sprint into second base, and it was then that I started realizing that, altitude made a difference in what we did. We got to play twice at Texas in the regionals, which was just wonderful experiences. And then same thing, it was just a lot lower. So I was blessed to play at altitude, and even going up to Montana. And in that first year, well, Steve's second year, but the first year for playing in the Pioneer League, it was a good chance to play. And, I hit some good balls at the lower altitudes as well. So, yeah,
you've got Hawaii and San Diego State in the conference there, El Paso. That really doesn't have the same altitude, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit, if you don't mind. Sure. Growing up, Steven and I both have had great memories of talking about, you always knew when the game was over because the streetlights would go on, or one of the moms would be screaming for somebody to, hey, it's time to go home, dinner time. And that's usually when overtime began. Were there a lot of outdoor activities for you? I mean, did you drink out of a regular sprinkler hose? I mean,
it was the hose. Yeah. It's funny, when I was young, we did move to Bellevue, Washington for a couple of years. And one thing I loved about living up there is they had fantastic sports programs for kids. And I remember summers, every single day we were at the park playing baseball until it got dark. And so that's just how our youth was growing up. It was always playing sports. I never played video games. I was just always playing ball, whether it was basketball or baseball or flag football.
Flag football, yeah, absolutely. And that goes into your high school, I guess. Good student. I mean, were you guy that really did you focus on your schoolwork, or was it just basically sports, and then more sports? Okay,
I didn't really apply myself. I had a 3.5 in high school. I mean, I was smart enough, and my son gives me crap because he's very smart, but he probably gets that from his mom. One funny story is when I got to BYU, it was Gary Pullins. It was his first year as a head coach. And Glenn Tuckett, who had been a legend, who was there forever, and he became the athletic director. And the very first day of school, I walked into the Smith Fieldhouse and saw him. He came up to me, says, Kenny, says, now you're a good ball player, but I want you to, promise me you're going to get your degree. And I mentally inside him thinking, I'll be playing pro ball. I don't need my degree. And years after, minor league ball, I kicked myself for not getting my degree, and I just did enough to stay eligible. And I sadly used the excuse that, okay, we're missing 30 to 35 days of school, so I just have to take easy classes. And so I'm more ashamed of myself of not doing those things. And I think a lot of kids who are real good ball players when they're young kind of think they're going to be able to just skate by in life and that they're going to be put up on a pedestal and always rewarded. And life isn't that way. And Steve knows from, a couple of years of minor league ball, and then you're staring, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And in fact, from that, so after my second year of minor league ball in the A's organization, they invited me to winter ball, and I was down there, and I worked at a 24-hour Nautilus in the off season, just as a trainer. They give me a chance to work and work out and get paid. Well, the end of the winter, a couple gentlemen walked in from San Jose. I didn't know where they were from. They were in suits. I introduced myself and showed them around, and I explained my story. And they said, "Well, we'll give you $50,000 a year to come run corporate sales for our new clubs in San Jose." And I was making $750 a month playing minor league ball. So my wife was kind of, "You're done playing baseball now, Kenny." and I was a good hitter, but I never had speed. And I mean, I had a lack of speed. So I made the right move at the right time. And the couple years experience was wonderful.
Wow. So the pro career, obviously, again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. But you mentioned the academics. Do me a small favor. You mentioned that, I wasn't really prepared. I wanted to just play sports, thought I was going to go pro. I'm not going to focus on a remorse for student, academic and, reading books and doing your homework. But there is an interesting aspect of that. I've always called it the what do you do when you're done? In fact, that's the name of my book. When I finish it, that's because there's an aspect of your life that you may not be prepared for. You have the opportunity through BYU and then in the minors to take some classes like you just mentioned. But talk a little bit about that experience for you. You ended up working in a gym, but prior to that, was there a remorse or anything like that? Were there certain classes that you wish you would have taken that would have better prepared you for what you really did? You want to be a doctor or a lawyer at one point in your life, or was that just something that revolved around baseball?
I always wanted to be a coach.
Okay.
And it was interesting because when I was at BYU, I was always wondering why I had to take physical science and some of these different classes that had nothing to do with coaching. But it didn't lead me to a well-rounded, balanced life. I mean, like now I'm 68 now, and I'm like looking at, I need to go take some classes just on computers and stuff. I panicked this morning getting this set up because my son was gone, and usually I'll yell at him, have him help me with any technical questions. Sure. I know I should have been more driven. I knew that what I wanted to do was play pro ball, and I didn't prepare myself well in case that that didn't pan out, and I should have worked harder towards getting into coaching. In my health club business years in San Jose, I coached one of high school baseball. They had me be the pitching coach, but I think I just had more general knowledge than anything else. And it was a fun experience, but I rested too much on my laurels, and I like that.
Well,
one thing now, because from where you're talking is the nil money right now in college ball. I think these kids are getting so much money, and I think a lot of them are just going to fall into that trap of, okay, I'm done playing ball. They don't want me anymore. They're booting me out, and I'm not prepared for anything else. So,
it's a tough challenge for anybody. But what I think, maybe not in book smarts or computer ease, so to speak, or some of the other technical skills that are available. Two guys in a suit were certainly impressed with your ability to communicate, and before you know it, they're offering you a bigger, better place to go. You did coach, you played baseball. What you lacked in maybe a certification and how to handle a rough day at the school in third period PE class by far is outweighed by, I've had to hit a 90-mile-an-hour curveball. And I can do some things. I may not be the biggest, fastest, strongest, but I'm sure close. Those are some things that other guys would never have. They have a teaching certificate, but they've never stood up to the plate and faced a guy like Steven Travers.
Hey, Steven, how hard did you throw the ball?
Oh, 87 miles an hour, at tops.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't a super hard thrower. I had very good control. I had a good curveball. I had a screwball, which was an out pitch, which was an unusual pitch to throw. But a coach at the University of Nevada had gotten to me. He saw me throwing a sinker, and he said, if you can throw a sinker, you can throw a screwball. And I was like, wasn't that for old people? And he goes, so 3 pitchers have won the Cy Young Award in the past 10 years throwing a screwball. Mike Cuellar, Mike Marshall, and Fernando Valenzuela. And I'm like, well, those guys are not old guys. So I realized you can get to the big leagues with that pitch. And it was a very good pitch. And I did eventually hurt my arm, but it might have gotten me there if I hadn't injured myself.
I don't know what pitches I hit off of you to make you have memories of me, but I remember when I was young, my brother and I, we would go to the Deseret gym and go into the racquetball courts and pitch tennis balls to each other. And we would throw as hard as we could. And it was fun, but it helped because the distance in a racquetball court is not a pitcher's mound to home plate. And it helped a lot. And I take kids in every once in a while now and take them and pitch to them and try and help them with that. Okay, I'm rambling again. So.
No. Can you see that's what I think is interesting, where there's a lot of street smarts that people have or book smarts. There's a difference between the two, and your ability to go, you know what, there's an instant that your mind has to make up where to have the bat head, the barrel, across that plane so that it can meet up with the ball that's coming in at a different speed. Steven threw 87, 88 probably in a straight fastball, but he said, you know, my curveball, my sinker, and eventually a screwball. You're not throwing that the same. So which one is it? And where do I gauge at the right time? For you to have a drill that you create in a racquetball court to try to get somebody to instantaneously figure out how I need to be able to hit this and do it with power and do it with consistency. Those two things alone, that's a very interesting drill that you created. And you know, a lot of guys wouldn't even think of that, right? They don't know. You can't teach what you don't know. I've said that for 100 years. So thank you for at least coming up with something that would help a young kid or yourself try to be able to hit a ball just a little bit better and put yourself in that zone and figure out how to do it.
No, sure. And growing up in Salt Lake, you know, we had winter time, and so that was when we were always in the gym in the racquetball courts hitting. So
yeah,
and
yeah, a lot of off season, probably from October to maybe this time of the year, right?
February. When I was at BYU, we started every season in the middle of February in Vegas.
Okay.
And you know, one of the tough things that was a challenge that really hurt us. This doesn't help BYU with recruiting, but all year long we were playing Colorado State and Air Force and Wyoming and New Mexico and UTEP and these teams, and you're not getting better. And then when you go down to Texas for the regionals, and I start seeing, well, that's what a real curveball looks like. So it helps to play better competition and face these people and these kids that want to get good. You know, they're lucky to get these travel teams, and these teams are playing against better players.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to beat up on a CSU or a Wyoming ball club that, you know, doesn't have. There's no money in the collegiate world for several programs that are cold weather cities.
Correct.
Generally speaking, it depends. If you're a smaller conference, right, a non-Power 5, it's very difficult. So. The BYU experience. First and foremost, let's go a little bit into high school. And when did you have the feeling or the knowledge that you had what it took, or what it takes to get to the next level? Was there a specific day or event that you go, you know what? Was there a coach or was there a scout that looked at you for the first time that said, hey, kid, you got to speed up a little bit, but I'm telling you right now, you can hit the ball hard, and we would love to have that at wherever that place is, right?
There was, it's funny, in high school, I started at West High, which had a great football and baseball coach. His name was Gene Plaga. And my sophomore year, he saw me out first day of school. I could kick 50-yard field goals in high school. He said, Kenny, if you don't come play for me, if you don't come kick for me, you're not going to play baseball. So I did it, and I loved it for 3 weeks. And then as a sophomore, I was also the biggest kid in school. And he told me I needed to play defensive tackle. And I went out one day, had no idea what stunts and blitzes and everything was because I never played.
Yeah.
And I transferred to Highland the next day, and I had a wonderful time there. They were not a strong baseball program. But because I'd always been so successful and done so well through all levels of playing ball, like my senior year, we played 24 games. I had a 24-game hitting streak and hit 575, I think. But again, it's against so-so pitching. So I always had that confidence. It's funny, I had that confidence in baseball, but not in basketball. So I played basketball as well, and we had a great basketball school. But baseball-wise, I just always had that confidence, and it probably just came from being successful and you know, not having anybody I couldn't face and hit.
At 6'5" in those days, and we're talking late 70s, early 80s, great high school height, right? You're right there with anybody. But at the next level, again, college, 6'5". Sorry, son, you got to be 6, 7, or 8 in order to play forward for us. And if you're not a guard or didn't play one in the high school level, it's a hard height to be at, isn't it, for a basketball player?
For a basketball player, it is. And I was good, but not that good. So I knew that I always had confidence. Whenever I was playing baseball, I always wanted to be the person hitting with 2 outs in the last inning. In basketball, I was kind of timid, and I'll pass the ball to you, and you can have it instead. And
yeah,
you can be our heroes. I had that confidence from baseball.
Now, when you transferred from one height to the other, football disappeared then, right? You didn't play
Correct. Yeah, I had a 3-week football career. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which is just a shame. I'm sure every football coach at the new high school, when you would be walking around in the in the hallways in between classes, would go, hey Kenny, Clayton, come on over here. I want to talk to you.
Well, it was funny because my senior year, I decided, you know what, I want to go out for tight end because I could play anything. And I went and talked to the coach in the summertime and told him I wanted to play. And he said, okay, fine, but you have to come to every conditioning program and event we do in the summer. And I said, I can come to every one that isn't conflicting with my baseball. And he said, well, we don't want you then. So
yeah,
so I just stuck with baseball and basketball.
Yeah. Well, what was the recruiting process like for you? A lot of folks, or was it just one? Tell me about the BYU experience. Was it just because it was close to home and you wanted to be a part of the Cougar program?
When I was young, my dad was the Cougar Club president here in Salt Lake. So we always went a couple hours before football games. We always went to basketball games. I always liked and wanted to go to BYU. I had a recruiting trip up to the University of Utah.
Yep.
And back in the days, their winter indoor baseball facility was a batting tunnel in the Armory building. BYU had an AstroTurf infield. It was just a night and day as far as the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Now, getting recruited to BYU, Gary Pullins, his first year was my first year. He came and saw me play one game in the summertime, and I hit a home run in that game. And he asked me to come down and try out, but he didn't have any scholarship for me. And I knew I wanted to go to BYU. And luckily, in the first month, I hit somewhere between 5 to 10 home runs. I'm old and don't remember now. And the rest of the first year, I was on half scholarship, and the rest of the years at BYU, I was on full ride. So it was pretty easy as far as going there. Mark Marcus at Stanford, we had conversations back and forth, but I grew up an LDS kid in Salt Lake, and I always wanted to go to BYU, so it was pretty simple as far as that decision.
Sure. And then you get in there from a football perspective. You said that you were at a lot of games with your father.
Yes.
We're talking Gifford Nielsen, Mark Wilson.
When it started, Gifford Nielsen was a senior my freshman year. I mean, we went through the great years. Mark Wilson was there. McMahon came and tried out one year with the baseball team and played JV ball. And we've gone golfing a few times, and he's hilarious. But then it got into Steve Young. In fact, one of the funnest things at BYU is we would lift early afternoon, and then we'd have a break for about an hour, and then we would have practice. Well, the baseball players would play against the football players, the skill position players, and in basketball in the Smith Fieldhouse, and we just destroyed them all the time. And every once in a while, they'd get a little bit upset, and they'd start bringing a couple linebackers and a couple linemen to kind of change the sport to more of a rugby basketball. But we had such good memories at BYU because they were great at all the different sports back then.
They really were, and that's what I'm saying is the Gifford and Mark Wilson really kind of paved the way for the program itself. I think self-recruiting, especially with LDS players, was pretty easy to do. But then, getting the other kids, maybe a few from California, and Jim's a New Jersey guy, and I bet you he was pretty good on the basketball court because Jim's a really good athlete. But a lot of people don't really realize this, but he can do everything. He can bowl, he can play racquetball. He could throw darts with you. He could throw darts left-handed with you and probably beat you in just about everything. Just a really skilled guy and focused. He's a very good golfer. He doesn't brag about it, but he can play with anybody, and it's pretty interesting that he had an injury in high school where he tore his knee up a little bit. He was an option quarterback, and he had to learn how to be a thrower. He couldn't throw a ball 40 yards. It wasn't impressive, but he got it to you, and he completed it with all the wobbles and whatever. And even in Chicago, he was one of those guys that just, I'm a leader, follow me, and we're going to win.
He's just a competitor.
And there are a lot of guys like that. I'm sorry, Kenny, I'm taking it. I was a teammate with Jim in Philadelphia, so I know more about him than a lot of folks do. And off the field, off the court, if you will, he's a guy that you want in your locker room.
Oh, yes. We played golf together a lot at BYU. I got to play in a NFL quarterback shootout challenge. And he was in the group behind us. He was barefoot and just raising a storm.
Yep.
And he was a good man.
Yeah, and again, helping put BYU, at least from a football perspective, on the map. And you got to do a little bit of that with the baseball program. So when you first get there, you're in the workouts. You said you didn't lift weights your freshman year, and by the senior year, you were lifting every day. How did that? Was there just a dedicated room that the baseball program was able to share with football?
No, we had in the back of the Smith Fieldhouse, we had a weight room for the athletes. It wasn't anything compared with what it is now, but it was just bit by bit. It got more and more. We did an awful lot of running, and in fact, an embarrassing story for me. We had to run the mile in 5.5 minutes, and I could easily do it, but I didn't think that I could, and so I would find ways to cheat around the corner of the Smith Fieldhouse and lived with that shame for all of my life. Then by my senior year, I was like, okay, every day after practice, I'm running 10 flights of stairs from the lower campus to the upper campus, and I would do all these extra things, and it made all the difference in the world when I made that commitment to be better. And just bit by bit each year, we just lifted more and more because they started realizing that, okay, this is helping. In fact, by my senior year, if we didn't have a game the next day after we would play, I would go find a weight room somewhere to lift just a moderate amount, but just to keep the bat speed up, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah, lifting for baseball was really an antithesis, right? There wasn't a whole lot of it back in the 70s. In fact, if you look at the major leaguers, they spent more time drinking or taking amphetamines between games than they did ever working out. And today there are guys that they have to at least do some sort of isometric stretching or very light plyometric type stuff, or light to medium weight in between games, like what you mentioned. So this is all new territory for a lot of baseball players. Did you find it was helpful in keeping your wrists or your arms strong, so that even if you weren't seeing the ball real well, you had the power to be able to get it out of the infield?
It did make a difference, and it really helped. And a funny story is, not funny story, but because I remember when Harmon Killebrew came and helped out. So again, freshman year, Cam Killebrew is our left fielder. So Harmon comes and helps out for a couple of months in the fall, and shaking his hand, it was the biggest meat cleaver. It was twice the size of anyone else's hand. And I remember when I was a clubhouse boy that Frank Howard, back in the days, same thing. His hands were just incredible as far as compared with everybody else. Now I wish I would have known those things, because yes, hand strength, forearm strength, all these things make a difference. Your big power hitters would just be so much stronger. And so it would have been wise to work harder on that, but we just didn't have any clue about it back then.
Yeah, amazing. And before we go to Steven, just your experience overall at BYU, you started with a half scholarship. Did you have a full one? And then, how did that help you in terms of just it prepped me? And by the way, was Danny Ainge on any of those teams that you had there?
He was. In fact, I almost brought up the story because playing intramural football, we had the 4A championships, and I was our quarterback, and Danny Ainge was the quarterback of the basketball players. So we had the basketball players against the baseball players, and they beat us by one score because they had the ball one more time than we did. But Ainge came and worked out with us, and I was so impressed with him in that, his dad made him sign a contract where he started no lower than AAA. And that's right out of high school. And I was just blown away years later, and maybe from all those years of being around the AAA guys in Salt Lake, that this man was just so impressive. He was incredible at every sport he played.
Well, what was the secret sauce for him? He's just an average looking guy, so to speak, but a little bit bigger than what you might expect to see if you saw him in person, but not in terms of his muscularity or anything. He played professional basketball. He's a big guy. And what was it, just in between his ears, his determination, his grit, was it he had an anticipatory step that, he would be able to be in the right place before another guy would? What impressed you in terms of Danny's talent level?
I think, when I wasn't around him growing up, and I had to be impressed. And I had to believe that, because to be as good as he was at all those sports, there were a couple things. One is just his determination and God-given talent to be good at those sports, but kind of like a Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan's the GOAT of all time in basketball, but his work ethic was so much better than everybody else, and his desire and drive. And I think Ainge had that same thing going for him.
Yeah.
He came just a little bit. He'd come take ground balls and stuff at the end of basketball and right before his, to go his first year of minor league ball. And so it didn't really, it wasn't anything power-wise or anything, but everything was a line drive and everything in basketball. He was just incredible in basketball.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, the NBA championships and everything apart from his NBA career just by itself stands alone. Yes. But to be able to hit a round ball with a round bat coming in at 88 or 92 miles an hour. That's not easy to do either. And he made it look simple. So I agree with you. I think the work ethic, doing things privately where there's nobody else around, but you were really working on getting better, improving, and making it simple so that you can do it repeatedly and do it with better success than others. For all intents and purposes, it's what you need, right? It's a work ethic that it's been proven to work.
It's a work, and I think it's also a mindset. I think when you get to a point where you're that good, having that mindset that you will succeed. Because I felt that in baseball, which I didn't feel in basketball. Not to the level of Danny Ainge or some of these, these guys that made it all the way. But I think he had a real tough mind.
Well, you get through BYU, and Steven, obviously minor leagues are next for you. Talk a little bit about that.
Steve's minor leagues or my minor leagues?
No, yours. I know Steven's has so many different portions of the interview he wants to go in. And
I'm scared about that. Not
your heart be troubled, Kenny.
It was an interesting path to get to the minor leagues because, again, playing in Utah and not being around the scouts. But, again, I was very slow of foot. I didn't hit too many triples. In fact, when I left BYU, I think I held every career hitting record there except for triples, which was a pretty simple thing. I didn't get drafted. And I had a great year, and I didn't get drafted. I was shocked and surprised. And I was married at the time. We just decided, you know what, I've got to pursue this a little bit. And there was a tryout camp down at Cal State Fullerton. And I got down there, and the scout from the Brewers was like, "Didn't you get drafted?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." And I had 2 at-bats, and I had a double and a triple. And he just says, "We'll sign you if you want to go play with our team up in, Butte, Montana." And I was ecstatic. And so I went up and signed, went up and played with them. And I got into town, and they were on a road trip and started using wooden bats and took a lot of batting practice with them. And I had blisters all over my hands. And so the first couple of weeks were a little bit tough, but I had a real good summer. I hit probably 370, something like that. And then we won the league championship. And then the second year I went to A-ball, and it was interesting because they had signed a kid named Ty Van Berkeley, who's a good ball player. But he was struggling his first year, and I went and asked coaches why I wasn't playing more, and I got released the next day. And so my wife and I went up to Idaho Falls because that's where her grandparents were. And under the A's, A's had a team there, and I went into the ballpark one night, and I saw Keith Lippman, and he asked me if I wanted to play for the team and would sign with them. And so I did and finished that year. And then that was where at the end of my second year, I was doing, I was down in Arizona for winter ball. And it was interesting, a real interesting story, because Harmon Killebrew, towards the end of winter ball, he says, "Kenny, you've got to change what you're doing." Because I'd always been more of a line drive hitter, great batting average, things like that. He says, "If you want to make it, you've got to hit home runs." He says they don't want a first baseman or third baseman that's going to hit 7 or 8 home runs, but hit 320 or whatever. And in the next 2 weeks, I decided to go the health club way. And so it's interesting looking back at baseball and how to try and help kids now, because I talk with kids. I actually run tennis tournaments for juniors now, which is not the same field, but it's still working with kids, and I enjoy doing that because I think there are a lot of things I wish I would have known at a younger age that would have helped quite a bit.
Well,
go ahead.
I think this is the point where your life is beginning to intersect with mine.
Exactly.
First of all, I am shocked that you were not drafted out of BYU. Were you an All-American at Brigham Young?
No, honorable mention.
Honorable mention, All-American. Well, you were an All-American. But I can't believe you were not drafted. I just remember reading about you in Collegiate Baseball magazine, playing against you. It just seemed like your name was always mentioned as being one of the really top college baseball players in the country during this time. The second question, and I guess I know the answer, but what year did you graduate from high school, and were you drafted out of high school?
No, I wasn't. I graduated in 1976. And again, very slow. But in Utah, there were no scouts in Utah. Very few kids came out and played. Yeah. And I had great stats, but I was slow of foot. And so.
Okay, so.
Oh, well, one thing. Let me interject there. again, so I'm working with the Angels organization, the AAA club. They used to let me throw batting practice, and I would hit with them. And they told me at the end of my senior year of high school, said, if you'll change and become a catcher, we'll draft you. And I had absolutely no interest in becoming a catcher. Big old bad knees, and so that was an opportunity there. But I was really glad I went to BYU. I had so much fun, and it was just such a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, the college experience is pretty tough to beat. I know some first-round draft picks who signed for big money, but they never had the college experience. And, I'm sitting there talking to my friend Bud Biancalana, who was a first-rounder of Kansas City, but he never played college ball. And you could see the look in his eyes like, boy, that would have been a lot of fun to play at the University of Texas or someplace like that. But okay, so there's some contrast. You and I both grow up. We're both very tall. You're 6'5", I'm 6'6". I was lifting weights right from my freshman year. I knew that I needed to do it because I was tall, but I was thin, and then I needed to put on the size. And I discovered very early, not only did it not tighten me up, it relaxed me. It got to the point where I could actually pitch better and feel better if I lifted weights in the morning, then went home, ate some lunch, took a shower, and then pitched a game that night. I would be better off. I discovered that at a very early age, and I think others later discovered it. The other difference between you and me is that you're growing up in the cold. I grew up in California and played for really a legendary team that played 37 games my senior year, and we were really a nationally ranked team. So that was my background. But then we get to, I'm at the University of Nevada, and I was very lucky to get a scholarship there. In fact, it came at the last second. I was very fortunate, but I got it. And the University of Nevada had won a national championship at Division II, and then they had moved into Division I, and it was a real struggle because we were in a good league with the likes of Fresno State, Santa Clara, and we're playing a lot of good teams. We would play Hawaii and Cal and Stanford and a lot of these kinds of teams, and the program struggled. And it was a cold weather program, and we looked to your team, Brigham Young University. We looked to you as the template for a cold weather, high mountain, high altitude baseball program. And when I got to Nevada, we were the guys who hadn't gotten the scholarships to the big schools. And we were lucky to be there. And we had a chip on our shoulder because we wanted to prove ourselves. Okay. So it's 1980. And I'm in the program, I'm in the rotation, and we get hot. And we run off a 20-game winning streak. It's the biggest winning streak in college baseball in 1980. We are ranked in the top 20. I think I was 7-0 or 8-0, and we roll into Provo, Utah to play Brigham Young University and Kenny Clayton. We get into town the night before the game, and I don't know why we didn't have a hotel, but we didn't. We slept in cots in the clubhouse, in the locker room with a football team. And so, as I say, we got in there at night, and at some point I woke up and I had to go to the bathroom. So I'm making my way with my hands to make sure that I'm not, falling on something because I can't see anything. I finally get to a door. I think it's the bathroom. I open the door, and there is the football stadium, and beyond it, the Rocky Mountains. Absolutely the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen in your life. Still snow-capped, cold, but not that cold. A brisk spring day in Provo, Utah. The clearest, bluest sky. They call it the big sky. And I'm like, wow. And I'm fired up because I'm going to be pitching. Now, you talk about the altitude. I wasn't worried about the altitude because we had altitude at Reno. And altitude actually made me a better pitcher because you've got to break off those curveballs and you've got to break that screwball off even more. in the high altitude, and then when you pitch in the lower, it's more effective. So we get to the game, okay? The first thing I notice is you have a shortstop by the name of Leon Bayham. And Leon Bayham was a guy who just sort of shadowed me for about 5 years. I first come across him when I'm 18. I'm playing in the California Collegiate Summer League. He's on the team. Very cocky guy, very talkative, had an opinion about everything. But I became friends with Leon and actually spent a night at his house, I think his grandmother's house in downtown LA. And he introduced me to Tommy's Burgers, which, Harper, I'm sure you're aware of. He claimed they were the greatest hamburgers in the world. And I tried to tell him, well, there's a place called Marin Joe's that has better. If they're different, the Tommy's Burgers are basically chili burgers. Marin Joe's were more cheeseburgers, but that's neither here nor there. The next year, I'm at Santa Monica Junior College. Leon is at El Camino JC, a team that we played several times. Again, razzing me, from the other side. And now we get to BYU, and I'm on the mound, and there's Leon, and he's just harassing me from the dugout. Just seems to know all my little secrets. But I'm trying to get past that. And I think I'm doing okay. And maybe I have a guy on, and up comes Kenny Clayton. And maybe I fall behind because I'm, working the corners. So I've got to come in with one, and boom! I get another look at those Rocky Mountains. And I remember thinking to myself, well, the good news is that it's really beautiful up here. And the bad news is that pelota has been deposited by the great Kenny Clayton. It was just an absolutely mammoth shot. Did not land in whatever there was bleacher-wise. It landed out in the parking lot or the science building or, Salt Lake City or someplace. And, I managed to stay in the game long enough to get to maybe the fourth inning, and up again comes Kenny Clayton. Well, he's gotten me the first time. So now I'm trying to, and I threw one of these curveballs that maybe hung a little bit in that altitude. Boom! Clayton, you're killing me, man. And this is the end of our 20-game winning streak. This is the end of my 7-0 or 8-0 record. This is my ERA is now shot up in one day from 1.5 to 3.4. And I'm not going to be undefeated this season. And so, boy, I got to tell you that you really captured my attention. So that's one of the reasons I had to have you on this show, to tell you that you really had won. You had a beautiful swing. You had a really nice batting stance, and I just looked at you and I go, this guy has no weaknesses up here. You're kind of looking at a tall guy like, okay, maybe I can keep it down there on the outside corner, and he might not reach it. I didn't get that impression at all. I got the impression that you were ready for what was ever coming, whether it was a breaking pitch or a fastball, and you sure were that day. So kudos to you, Mr. Clayton. I don't know how well you remember that day, but I certainly do.
I sadly don't remember any of that. And I remember a lot of my home runs that went at, and it was, the Marriott Center was across the street from us.
Yeah.
And there was the fence, and then there was about 50 to 100 feet of grass, and then another fence up to the street. And I remember hitting some balls up onto the street, but I just don't remember who they were against.
Yeah.
I think the only time I remember specifics, we played at Arizona State in a doubleheader my senior year. Wally Joyner was our first baseman, and in fact, I hated Wally Joyner back then because I played first base my first 3 years, and there's no better position to play if you're a talkative person like me, because I could talk to the umpire, the first base coach, and guys when they got on base. Well, Wally came, I moved over. Coach Pullins moved me over to third base, but in the minor leagues, I played third base probably a quarter of the time, so it really helped Me and like when I talk with young kids, I always try and suggest that they play multiple positions. But so your glory days mentioned of me and it makes me feel a lot better, and I still have a reason to live. We were playing at Arizona State, and we played them in a doubleheader, and we lost like 18-4 the first game, and we just gave up. They were the number one team in the country at the time, and we just went there and we just expected to lose, and it was just horrible. And then a couple of us called the team, decided to go down and talk in between the games for the doubleheader, and just said we cannot have another effort like this. We ended up beating them 4-2 or 4-3, and I hit 2 home runs. They were both over 450 feet. And I don't know why. It wasn't something majestic or magical. I just maybe had a lucky bat that hit the ball that far. But, a lot of the old memories are kind of gone. And
well, help me out here with this. Was Wally Joyner the first baseman in 1980? Is this your senior?
No. Well, my senior year was Wally's freshman year. So that was we finished in 81.
Okay, were you a fifth-year senior in 81?
I was, yeah. I destroyed my shoulder. In fact, I've got a new shoulder from when I dove for the ball on the AstroTurf, and so I had to sit out that year, my second year there. And so, so Wally came for 81.
Okay. He played you again in 81, and I'm only now realizing that I played against Wally Joyner, because we played against you the next year. I think it was again. And you had Leon Baham at shortstop, shadowing me. So this is very interesting. I didn't realize Wally Joyner played against him. And so you're saying your senior year you were injured?
No, my sophomore year.
Oh, so that's why you redshirted.
Yeah. But my freshman year, I got 24 at bats, and played JV ball mostly, and hit 400. But
how many homers did you hit in 1980?
20.
That's a lot of home runs in college, especially playing at BYU, where you probably didn't play as many games as a warmer weather school.
It was fun. It was good times, and it was funny that last year, about 3/4 of the way through the season, I was leading the nation in home runs, and I went golfing with a couple of the buddies. We went and played. Didn't hit another home run the rest of the year. And of course, there's always talk with people as far as, you can't play baseball and golf. Well, I totally disagree, because when Wally was playing Major League Ball, we would go. They came to California to play, and I got to go play with he and a couple of the guys from Kansas City, and so it was maybe just that I sucked it by the end of the year.
Well, I don't know about that, but there was no internet in those days.
No.
And I subscribed to Collegiate Baseball magazine because I wanted to know who we were playing against. I wanted to know the lay of the land. I wanted to know who the other good players were, and what my position would be in the draft, because you can easily get into a bubble.
Sure. I'm
doing really well, here in Reno. Or you're doing really well at BYU, but there's a whole world of Georgia Techs and Texases and USCs and Stanfords and Snow College and junior college players and high school players that are out there who are hungry and competing, and it's an extremely competitive world to try to make it. And so I wanted to try to understand who everybody was. And so, again, I knew who Kenny Clayton was before we played you, and I certainly knew who you were afterward. And I probably paid more attention to your progress, both in college and then as you were getting into the minor leagues. As I'm reading the sporting news, and I'm reading your name. I'm knowing that you're playing with the Milwaukee Brewers. So, staying with the through line of Clayton and Travers. 81 is, I again have a pretty good year at Nevada, and I signed with the St. Louis Cardinals. I go into the minor leagues, and I have actually a good season, but I injure myself. I'm pretty sure that I tore my rotator cuff. And then Oakland takes a flyer on me.
Okay.
Billy Martin is the manager. I go through spring training, and we get to Medford, Oregon in in June, and this is a little like a training camp after the draft. And from there, we get assigned to Idaho Falls. And this is where you become my teammate. This is the Idaho Falls A's. Now, if you recall, as you said, Keith Littman, who was the A's director of player development for decades to this, but you'd already knew him. Grady Fuson was, I don't know whether you call him a pitching coach, but he was the second coach. And if you ever seen the movie Moneyball, he's the guy who was a scout who basically tells some things to Billy Beane playing Billy, or Brad Pitt playing Billy Beane, that gets him fired. So he was on that team. Jim Perry, Harmon Killebrew, I think they were involved in the organization. I think Killebrew was a roving hitting coach, I believe.
He was.
I do remember his son, Cam, was an outstanding player. I remember Vernon Law. That was going back to his son was an outstanding ball player at BYU.
Vance. Mm-hmm.
Yes. You guys were, as I said, the template for cold weather teams. But we're playing it at Idaho Falls, and you said you were playing third base, but I remember you being a first baseman on that team.
Well, Greg Robles also played, and he played some first, and I played some when we were both in the lineup.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. Greg Robles I knew very well because he had played at San Jose State. They were in our league, and I had my share of run-ins with Greg Robles, both in college ball and in summer ball up in Canada. But we became really good friends when we were teammates. And the thing I always remember about you is, we were all minor league players. Almost everybody was single. And, the game would end and off we'd go to do whatever we did. And it was always, I see you, Kenny. And you were always, I got to go call my wife. I always remember that about you. We couldn't believe it. We had a guy who was married and had not one, but several children, if I recall. What was it like to be in that environment and to be married at that young point in your pro career?
It was interesting. It was a bit of a challenge. Didn't have children, so maybe you're thinking of somebody else.
Okay, I thought you had kids.
No, I've got one son, but that's
okay.
That's in later years after I'm done playing ball.
Okay.
But it was different, and even comparing college and pro ball. I mean, I had so much fun playing college ball, and pro ball was more of a business. But the guys after games would go out and go to dinner at the bar, and when we'd go our separate ways. And so, it was different. It wasn't as easy. If I had it to do over again, and I had an inkling as far as wanting to play ball, I maybe would have just focused on that first. Got a wonderful child out of my marriage with her, and it was interesting. But yeah, it would have been a little bit different. One thing I wanted to say before I forget on this was, because when I was at BYU, after our senior year, like our last game at Texas, we lost in the regional finals at Texas, and I just walked out of the locker room. And I was like, I'm done with my career, and it was the weirdest thing. But the point I'm trying to make on this is that I wish I would have known, and this is for young kids, learning to get that drive to, if you can decide to do something, you do it 100%. You don't just, because I showed up quite a bit and just got by on natural ability and realized that there was so much more that I could have done in the younger years to prepare me and get me more ready and expect more of myself. Because I realized that BYU, and this is maybe a BYU thing that's tough, is we were happy to be there. We got to the regionals and we were excited and happy to be there. It wasn't, we're one step away from the College World Series. And just something that, you learn, and maybe you find the coach that helps, that has that drive that gets you there. And I'm not saying that our coach wasn't there, but just as BYU compared with the big schools, the SCs and the Texases and Arizona States, we were happy to be there. So.
Well, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that, because in my mind, I was kind of in awe of you and your program. We played a lot of good teams. We played Cal, we played Stanford, played Fresno State. We gave as well as we got, and they were really good. You guys just ate us up.
We were lucky. We had good teams. No, we weren't lucky to play. I mean, my favorite part of my life was my years at BYU. It was just fantastic and exciting. And I just sit and look back at teams now, and sometimes you're not prepared. And I think sometimes you do just get happy to be there and be part of it, instead of it's like, you know what, I want the pinnacle. I want to be the top team, and I want to win it all.
Okay, so it's 1982. Were you at the training camp that we had in Medford before we got sent to Idaho Falls?
No. So in 82, I was playing in Beloit, Wisconsin. I was playing A-ball. And again, I was not playing all the time. First summer I hit like 350.
Was that so long?
That was the Brewers. So I started second summer in Beloit, Wisconsin. And then the one day I went up and asked the head coach why I wasn't playing more, because my stats were so much better than the other first baseman that they were playing all the time. But they had given him a $250,000 bonus. And as years go by, and you learn that it was Ty Van Berkeley.
Okay.
And he ended up having a good career, ended up coaching and stuff. And I'm younger and faster and just not as developed. I got to play more years of college ball. So, for a lot of the kids, do you remember Canseco?
Well, that was my next question. Because the reason I asked about Medford is I'm in Medford. I'm with my friend Dennis Gonzalez. I don't know if you know him. He was a pitcher out of Long Beach State, played at Madison that year. And he points to this guy and he says, "Hey, that's Jose Canseco." And I'm going, "Yeah, I know that name." And I think he was 17 years old.
Yeah, just out of high school.
Yes, I'm not even. I want to say he'd gone to Miami-Dade Junior College, but maybe I'm wrong. But he was very young, and he was only about, as I recall, about 5'11" and maybe 165. But he looked sturdy, and he looked like and I don't think he'd been drafted particularly high, but there was already talk. People were already talking about his athletic ability and the quickness of his swing. And he ended up on that team that we played for at Idaho Falls. So how well do you remember Canseco playing on that team that season?
Well, I've got a better memory than you on some things. He was a lot taller than that. He was skinny as could be. He was just a big, skinny kid out of high school. Okay. And his swing, the ball would just jump off the bat. And you knew there was something special there. It was interesting, and it was fun because you could tell there were certain players I played with in minor league ball, like Eric Payton, when it was the Brewers. The ball would just jump off the bat, and there's some people who were just magic. But Canseco, yeah, he was tall. He was very slender.
Okay,
so maybe took something to supplement his. Kidding. We would hit third and fourth, and he had good talent. So I joined the team. So I left the Brewers. Well, they released me, and my wife's grandmother lived in Shelley, Idaho, outside of Idaho Falls, and that was when we went and saw a ball game. And I realized that Keith Lippman was there and Killebrew, and they asked me why I was there and still not playing. I told them I'd just been released, and they said, "Well, will you sign with us?" So I joined you guys partway through the summer.
Okay, all right, that fills in a few blanks. My memory of, I always tried to pay attention, because I knew that I was doing interesting things and I wanted to pay attention, but I just have this image in my mind of what Canseco looked like, and I can see it now, and I can see Dennis Gonzalez and a few others during this Medford period. This was actually first before we went to Idaho.
Was Medford just like an extended spring training, or just?
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was right after the draft. So these were the guys who had been drafted. I had been with the Cardinals the previous year. I had been in spring training in 82. I don't think Canseco was there because I think he was actually playing high school or junior college ball during the spring. And then I'd started off at Modesto of the California League, and then and that team had you can look them up. It's one of the greatest minor league baseball teams ever assembled. And I got absolutely no innings. In fact, if you look it up, you won't even see me as being a member of the team because I just sat in the bullpen without pitching a game 10 games into the season, Brad Fisher says, Steve, we really don't need 10 pitchers or 11 pitchers. So he sent me home and said, report to Medford. So I get to Medford. So I'm there with my friend Dennis Gonzalez and Jerry. What was Greg Robles.
Uh-huh.
Then, the thing about this situation is you take a look at the writing on the wall, as the book of Daniel says in the Old Testament, the writing on the wall, you shall not be king. You've been found wanting. And slowly but surely you get to see this, because every move that is being made in my career, I'm going lower and lower in the Oakland A's farm system instead of higher and higher. You want to be going to A-ball, then you want to get to AA, then you want to get to AAA.
Uh-huh.
It's not going that way. So this is about the point where I'm realizing I think I'm going to have to go back to school, and I'm going to get myself into USC for my last couple of years of school. But I get assigned to Idaho Falls, and I'm there with you. And there was another player who was on that team, was a lifelong friend. Well, there was Leon Bayham again.
Uh-huh.
Okay. This is like the 5th consecutive year that I had some association with Leon Bayham, and he's again my teammate. He started off as my teammate, and he was just very cocky, but a good guy. But you had to understand him. You had to understand Leon. How well did you know Leon? Because you played with him at BYU, and now you're with the A's, and I see you guys occasionally jousting on Facebook. Tell me your opinion of the great Leon Bayham.
Well, I really like him now because he works at a beautiful golf course in Riverside called Oak Quarry. And so I always get to go down and visit him and get some free golf in. But nice. we had fun times at BYU, and I gave him so much crap because he was such a prima donna. We're driving down to Arizona State, and he needed to stop like 3 times to pee. And whatever he wanted to do, they did. But he was great. And it was interesting because Leon, my senior year, he played shortstop, I played third base, and it was basically if you're playing doubles tennis, and I was told to cover the doubles line, just that last little 4 feet, and he would cover the rest of the infield.
Yeah.
And we played ball afterwards, and we had a good respect for each other. And he is a good guy, and it's hilarious and funny because we have very different political views, and so we just stay away from that and don't talk that at all. Right. But he just, he's had struggles through life, and he shares things with me because my son's had struggles through life, and I've had struggles, and well, we all do, I guess.
Haven't we all?
We actually sit, and we all have different things that we have to deal with. So we've stayed friends, and in fact, I don't know if I'll see him this weekend or not. Really? I was really lucky. So freshman year, you've got Cam Killebrew in left field, you've got Vance Law as our shortstop, so Vern Law's our pitching coach. Vern Law would take us, and he'd be like, okay, let's work on sliders away. And he would just throw you sliders away and so good. But then when Vance left, then he left. And then a gentleman named Bob Knoll became our pitching coach, and just an angel of a man. He just passed away. And so he's got his funerals this weekend, and his family was like, you know what? He would want for you guys to come here and have a reunion and have some fun. So I think a few of the guys are coming, and so it's going to be a good thing. So yeah, Leon's a good man.
And a very talented ball player. I mean,
really, very smooth
athlete.
I laugh because he still thinks he can hit the ball further than me. But
he what?
I laugh because he still thinks he can hit the ball further than me. Golfing and old baseball days. So yeah.
Well, that's not surprising. Another player on that team, I don't know if you remember him, but he's one of my best friends to this day, Dave Weatherman, who was a spectacular college pitcher at Cal State Fullerton, and was one of those guys who was just fantastic in college and maybe just didn't have the stuff to go all the way to the big leagues. But he was on that team. Do you remember Dave very well?
I do. I don't remember him well, but I remember him being on the team.
Right. Well, he and I are just really good friends.
Good friends.
Yeah, I've known him. I knew him since long before the minor leagues, and then ran into him in spring training. Oh, yeah. Well, I knew he was there, actually, because I'd seen him at a wedding the winter before that. Really good ball player, really good guy. I went to the College World Series with Dave just a couple of years ago, 2023 in Omaha. But I wanted to also ask you, this is going back one year, you played at Butte, and that was another team that was in the Pioneer League. And I got to tell you, Kenny, that was one of the most amazing towns that I have ever seen. When you go to Butte, Harper, when you go to Butte, Montana, you are going back in time. I remember, I think it was 4th of July, and I mean, literally saloons with the swinging doors, and in front, instead of parking spaces, wooden planks for horses.
Tie up the horses, yeah.
You tie up the horses, and as the day went on the 4th of July, people would get reared up in these bars and then come out and shoot guns into the air, with the bullets going way up and then landing God knows where. And then the ballpark was on the edge of town, as I recall, and beyond left field, I think it was a mountain which had been completely stripped because it had copper, the Copper Kings. And it was there was a smell of sulfur, and you're almost looking for the enemy, in the smell of sulfur and copper. And you're like, wow, what have they, as Jim Morrison would have said, what have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? And boy, I tell you, that this was really an example of environmental rape, if you've ever seen it. I guess we needed the copper. But you played there for a whole summer. What was that like, Kenny?
You know what? We had a good team that summer, and winning brings out the fans. So it was pretty much sold out every night. A funny story about Butte, to start out with it. My wife, we was married. My wife and I, we went in to find an apartment for the summer, and we get there. You turn on the cold water, and it was copper color. There's all this rust and stuff. So we drank Kool-Aid the entire summer because we couldn't stomach, the idea of just having the murky looking water. The fans were fantastic. They would have us, like, they'd have my wife and I over for dinner. Then they showed us all their pictures of just you couldn't even see the house because of the snow, being piled so high. But fans were great. They were good. It was a different experience for me than the others because I was married. So I would go back to the apartment every night with my wife, and I know the other guys there enjoyed it, and we had a real good experience. And then winning the league championship really made it a lot of fun.
Was Cecil Fielder on that team?
No, the second year. So because I think my second year he was on a team, and we watched him hit home runs because you had the stadium. And I guess it had been a football stadium before, because in the left field you had rows and rows of bleachers. And we're taking batting practice, and he's hitting balls 25, 30 rows up. And one really tough thing about playing minor league baseball, and especially down at the bottom of the minor leagues, was we got crap for bats. We just got balsa wood and whatever was left over. And I know this because when I got invited by the A's for that extra instructional league, Dave McKay was on the A's team, and I had pitched in high school, and so we went through batting practice to each other, and he let me use his bats, and the balls just jumped so much more off of those major league players' bats and stuff, and so it was quite exciting. But again, I remember a fielder, and that was him, that we were just watching take batting practice. It was like, holy cow!
You know who else was in that league? David Wells pitched for Medicine Hat. I don't know if you call him. Do you remember?
Sid Fernandez did as well, and I never saw somebody such. He had such explosive.
Oh, at Kingsport. Well, wait a minute. That was the previous year. I played.
He was in the Dodgers organization, and he played up in Lethbridge.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that reminds me. Do you remember the fight at Lethbridge with Mariano Duncan?
No.
Because we got into a fight. Somehow we brushed back Mariano Duncan.
Okay.
The thing I remember was the Dodgers. There was an aura to the Dodgers. When you played the Yankees or the Dodgers, I don't know if you ever played the Yankees. I played against the Paintsville Yankees in the Cardinals organization. When you played the Dodgers or the Yankees, there was a sense that okay, we better be on our toes because for some reason, these are the two organizations that you really pay attention to. I'm sure the Cardinals as well and a few others. And I think Oakland, heck, when we were with Oakland, we were named Organization of the Year by Baseball America. Every single A's minor league team that year won their league. I don't know if you're aware of that. But yeah, we got into a fight with Mariano Duncan. So you don't recall that event? Huh?
No.
Do you remember a player with the A's named Dave Wilder?
Yes, I do. Dave was a good man.
He was a really good man.
Yeah.
He had played at Cal State Fullerton. I remember we gave him a ton of crap because in '82 he was with Fullerton. I think they were ranked number 1 in the nation when they went to Omaha, and they got smoked out in 2 straight games and were sent home. And I think there were some players who played for the teams that beat him in the College World Series. So Dave took a lot of heat for that. But he had a long career.
He was quite a physical specimen. Didn't he get into management?
He got into management for many years.
The White Sox, I think.
Organization. I actually ran into him when I was a writer for the San Francisco Examiner, and recalled you and that season and the friendships that we had. It was a really wonderful experience for me. And obviously, I mean, the thing about it is, Kenny, you get an education you can't get in a book.
Absolutely.
Someone like yourself from Salt Lake City, or someone like myself who's from suburban California, I never would have met Leon Boeheim, or players from the Deep South, or players from the Dominican Republic. All these different kinds of people with different ethnicities and different backgrounds and just different lives. And we all come together as a team. And I just, like I say, I don't think you can learn that, in a book. And it was part of my education. Do you feel the same way?
One question first. Were you much of a fighter growing up?
I kind of was more your way. Like I was more of a lover, but
yeah.
If I got backed up, usually if someone was really needling me, I'll take it and I'll take it and I'll take it, and then something will snap. And
but if they're messing with your family or
a few people, not too proud of it, but you get me going, and I'll react. It takes a while.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting old because you asked me a question. I totally forgot what it was.
Oh, well, I was just talking about the great experience of knowing all these different kinds of people, from different countries and different states and different ethnicities. And I just thought it was fantastic. And, how's your feeling about that?
Oh, it was. It was so much fun. In fact, watching this World Baseball Classic, because I remember so many, South American, Central American, Dominican players and stuff, that we had a good time. And it was a wonderful experience getting to know and meet these people, and it does broadens what you do and how you get to do things. And I was lucky enough to do like 3 humanitarian trips from like 2009 to 2014, and taking these high school kids down to South America. We go to Peru twice and Ecuador once, but seeing these kids play and how good they were at their sports, but they just didn't have the opportunities. And there are a lot of life lessons you can learn from the experiences we had playing ball. So.
You were not in spring training with me, but there was. I'll cut this to the short because it's a long story if I wanted to tell it long, but I'll just give it to you short. Is that I actually got called up out of minor league camp to pitch in a big league spring training exhibition game against the San Francisco Giants at Phoenix.
Oh, that's awesome.
Stadium. It was an awesome experience. Especially, I just answered the bell and pitched 3 innings and struck out 7 guys. I had Joe Morgan was playing second base for the Giants. We had Ricky Wilson in left field, Joe Rudy. Frank Robinson was the manager of the Giants. Jack Clark was with the Giants. Bill King was announcing the game. He was the Hall of Fame announcer. Lon Simmons was announcing. it was just an amazing day. But excuse me, our manager was Billy Martin.
Okay.
And first off, the thing that you have to understand is when you get to spring training in Phoenix, the first day they give you a list. And you look at the list and it says the Pink Pony. And it says, radius and axis. And it has all these restaurants and bars. And you're looking at it like, what is this? And it was Jim Perry, who was pitcher for the Gaylord Perry's brother. Great pitcher for the Twins. He was one who gave it to me. He was the minor league pitching coach, if you will. Those are the bars you're not allowed to go to because that's where Billy Martin goes. And you're not allowed to go to the bars where Billy goes because he drinks and gets in fights with his players. Oh, okay. So this precursors this day. I'm showing up at the ballpark and I'm looking for Billy Martin because he's my manager. It's going to be my manager. This is going to be great. Hi, Billy. I'm from the Bay Area too. I used to play against Berkeley High when I was at Redwood High. That's your alma mater. And it's an honor to be around you. And wow, you're Billy Martin. And you got any Mickey Mantle stories for me? No, don't see Billy. The game starts. It's 90 degrees. And he comes in and he's wearing a full jacket tied up to his neck with Art Fowler, his pitching coach, who was really his drinking buddy. And those two guys were so hungover from wherever they went the previous night, probably the Pink Pony. They sat there just huddled up, never said a word to me or anyone. They didn't call a bunt. They didn't call a double steal. They didn't call for a right-hander or a left-hander. So I never said two words to Billy Martin. So that was it would have been great if you could have been there so you could remember that story. That's just one I've been telling for years. So that's my number one Oakland A's story.
Your major league experience pitching and the 7 strikeouts is a fantastic story.
It was on the radio and listening to it back in California, and I think some of my friends hearing it. It was. And later I met Bill King, and incredibly he remembered me, and he goes, "Oh, sure, I remember you. You were played on the glory days at Redwood High," because he grew up near me, or he didn't grow up. He lived near where I lived, and he read the same newspaper that covered my high school, and he read that paper, and he followed high school sports, and he remembered my name and how good our team was, and. Yeah, he passed away far too soon. So listen, Harper, I think I've covered just about everything on the road back on memory lane with Kenny that I can recall. So we can switch it back to you and some of the more biographical questions that you might have.
One thing going down memory lane here with all this stuff made me think about when I was young and having that thought that I would, continue on playing ball. It was always my dad. My dad was just always there and always setting up things. Like when it was in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we lived in Bellevue, Washington. And UCLA came up to play Washington in basketball. And we had tickets. We went to the game, and my dad tells me, he says, just go up and ask him. So I went up and asked Coach Wooden if I could be the ball boy. And he's like, sure. I don't know if my dad had said something first, but so for the 3 years they were up there, came up to Washington, I got to sit on the bench and be the ball boy. And it was Alcinder's 3 years.
Oh my God.
And then, my dad helped me write a letter to Coach Wooden afterwards, thanking him. And then a couple years later, we moved back here to Utah, and Walton was playing down in Provo in the regionals. Wrote him a letter again, said I had a ticket. Can I be on the bench? And he said, sure. And so I think my dad paved the way for an awful lot of things and opportunities. And but he died at 50.
Bat boy for the University of California in when I was 10 years old. And that was a good team that Cal had. I'm trying to remember. They had one guy who got to the big major leagues. But yeah, speaking of big bat boys and ball boys, I did all those things. You were just a kid. You just ate it up with a fork and spoon.
I was very lucky.
You couldn't be around it enough,
No.
And not only that, I was lucky enough to grow up around Major League ball. So we were going to some 35 or 40 Oakland A's games every year during the period of time when the A's were world champions. And went to every World Series game. It was it was a spectacular youth, you know.
And now we just have to go with our glory days and remembering the past. I mean, I've got my Oakland A's hoodie on. I keep a Brewers and an A's one, and people always be like, "Oh, you're a big fan." I'm like, "Well, I played in the minor leagues." So,
well, I would have worn an A's hat and an A's jacket, but I have bought property in New England, and I'm here, and all that stuff is packed up at my house.
Boston now.
California. So I'll go back in September.
Have you ever been to Fenway?
Excuse me?
Have you ever been to Fenway Park?
I have been. Not only have I been to Fenway Park, I've been there in the company of Bill Spaceman Lee, who is my neighbor here in Vermont. And okay, I got to tell this story. So we're at Fenway Park, and first of all, you're with Bill Lee. He knows everybody by first name, and everyone recognizes Bill. So you're just
that's awesome.
You're in the company of an icon. So we get there, and we're in like a $16,000 a night luxury suite, and Bill actually pay Bill to be there because the people who pay the money are one of the things they're paying for is to be in the company of the Red Sox legend. In this case, it was Bill Lee and Louis Tiant, and I'm there with Bill and Louis Tiant. So you can imagine how fun that was. But we get there really early, and this is before the fans are there. And we look down, and Pedro Martinez is filming a commercial along the first base line. And Bill knows Pedro, and he picks up a baseball and he signs it, "Dear Pedro, love you, Spaceman Lee." And he calls down and goes, "Hey, Pedro." And he looks up. Pedro isn't sure who it is. All of a sudden, Bill throws a ball that arses over and lands right on the warning track and bounces right into Pedro's hand perfectly. Joe reads it and he realizes that that's Bill Lee.
Who it is.
Hey, Bill, you still got it, you know? So that's how it was that whole weekend. It was just incredibly memorable. And so, and I think we're tentatively planning a trip, Bill and I, to Fenway probably in June, and then we're going to go see a game in the Cape Cod League, and possibly if USC, by the way, is 20-1, off to a great start. If they can get to the College World Series, I'm going to try to talk Bill into coming with me to see the championship game, but we won't know until. It's one of those things you can't plan. You won't know that they're in it until the last second, but that's something we're possibly on our radar.
Kenny, you had some great stories, obviously, about the minor leagues and everything that was a part of your life. And then you also mentioned earlier that the two guys in the suit who owned the business end up asking you to be a part of the gym. You end up going to Vegas. Tell us where you are now. What are things that are going on in your life now? Any involvement with baseball still?
Not really. I for the last 20 years, from 2001 to 2022, I managed a big health club here in Salt Lake. And then I tried to retire, and that lasted a day. And I got invited by another health club to help run their junior tennis tournaments and their kids camps. And it's fun with the kids camps because they always have me specialize and help with the kids with baseball and football and just the sports. And I like helping the little kids especially who are just more beginners and maybe the wallflowers, and not so much the superstars. So the last few years I've been doing just running tennis tournaments every weekend, trying to golf a little bit more. I'm getting old and falling apart. So starting to realize I need to make some good memories for myself, because he talks about that experience back in Boston, and I'm going to start doing some road trips. So semi-retired, still working and enjoying life.
The tennis aspect, it's funny to hear you mention that from a Salt Lake City perspective. It doesn't appear that any tennis in the world is not involving Florida in some way, some way, shape, or form. And what's the tennis world like? What is the competition level like there in Salt Lake?
How I got involved in it was I managed a place called the Sports Mall in Murray, which had 20 tennis courts. In the first couple of years I was there, I never even walked back to the tennis courts. I was just up in the weight rooms and basketball and racquetball courts. And then I decided one day to walk back, and I realized it's amazing how similar tennis and baseball are. Serving a tennis ball is throwing a baseball. And so you're throwing a fastball, I can put a little cut to it or a big cut to it and get a lot more kick spin. And you find that people that play baseball or softball or volleyball become good tennis players. It was just part of what I was doing. There's not a huge community here as far as, you don't, as you're a young kid growing up thinking, okay, I want to go to Salt Lake because that's going to be my springboard, into a bigger career. But there are a lot of kids here. They're good players. They, go play in North Carolina. One of the girls is a Tar Heel. And so tennis, it's a fun thing to do for me, but I'm not at the level as far as helping these elite kids, trying to move forward into their college and pro careers.
Yeah. What about pickleball? I have to ask because I know that's kind of taking over.
That just hit a nerve right there. I hate pickleball. Probably mostly because managing a health club, we started out, we had 20 tennis courts and we had basketball courts. And when pickleball a few years ago first came a thing, they taped lines for 3 pickleball courts in the basketball gym, and we would set certain times where they could play pickleball. And of course, the pickleball players thought that the gym was now a pickleball facility. And so basketball took, a back seat, and the pickleballers just tried to take over. Now the facility, that Sports Mall facility now has 20 pickleball courts or 18 pickleball courts. So they've taken over. And it's interesting because a lot of older people will want to go to pickleball because they don't have to cover as large of an area. But you're still, as we get older, we start stumbling more and lose our balance. And you get people just falling and breaking wrists and hips and knees and all kinds of problems. I've got good friends that are physical therapists, and they've got so much more business because of older people trying to still play pickleball.
Yeah.
But it's also good because getting older, I'm seeing that it is so important to stay active because it's an awful lot easier to just sit in a recliner and just, turn the TV on and watch some sporting events, but the body starts deteriorating and it's not a good thing. So just a matter of being smart. Do you play pickleball?
Pickleball may not be right for everyone, but you know what? There's a lot of kids that aren't very athletic. It's not very expensive. You get a chance to do stuff. They have a little group that they play with together. I love that fact. That's kind of a wiffle ball for the 21st century, if you know what I mean.
I could not agree more as far as that is from that point. And in fact, the junior tennis programs I do, I really work more with the beginning to intermediate level players. They're just trying to get started. And these kids trying to gain confidence and just playing matches. It's like you gain confidence from it. And you're kind of scared and intimidated a little bit at first. And so, most of what I'm doing is trying to help kids play junior varsity high school tennis eventually, but the trying to build them up and the help with their esteem and seeing that they can do a lot more. It's fun taking kids who are at that beginning level. And yes, pickleball is a fantastic way to do it. And so it's like I try to get kids to go golfing more with me. I'll take a lot of the parents to let me take their kids and we'll go golfing because the same thing. It's just you're learning good lessons in life on play honorably, play respectfully, and you're trying to create good new friendships and not trying to crush everybody.
You mentioned tennis, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I'll just say it. I was a really, really good tennis player when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
I was probably even better in tennis than I was in baseball up until age 14 or 15. And you're completely right. The experience of the serve and pitching was very, very similar. I think golf is more similar in terms of hitting than it is pitching, although there is a lot of similarity to it in terms of hand-eye coordination and placing the ball in a certain place. But yeah, you're completely right about the serve. It's very much like pitching a baseball. It's over the top, and yes, you can spin it. You got to place it in a certain spot, and so I think it really helped me. Eventually, I realized I love baseball more, and I'm going to have to more or less drop tennis to concentrate on baseball.
One more aspect as far as the tennis, because I started playing league and I had a whole lot of fun. being up at the net, it's like bunting a baseball because they would hit shots at me and I would just catch it and drop it here or drop it there. And they're like, how do you do that? I'm like, it's
you're not intimidated because you face a 90-mile-an-hour fastball from 60 feet away. You're not intimidated. The speed of a ball is usually, it's like Harper playing football. The speed of the game is intimidating to you until you've learned it, until you've done it, you've excelled at it. And
even with different sports, because like growing up, I mean, I remember when I was 6, 7 years old, we would play hockey downstairs, and the door frame was the goal, and we would do that, and I'd get the hamper for the laundry, and across the room I'd shoot baskets at it. And for a lot of these young kids who are coming into these summer camps who have no experience, they've got no athleticism whatsoever, teaching them to go against the wall and just start throwing and just catching one way, and it gets a little bit better and a little bit better, and you just slowly start progressing. And athletics is just a wonderful way to help kids gain confidence. And because there are an awful lot of kids and parents that don't have any of that the kids will kind of stay awkward, and it's really a sad thing. And so I'm going to try and do more of that in my older years now. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the golf aspect of it. I was bowling recently, and there was a mother that was with a couple of boys, and one of them was her son. A couple of the other kids were just friends. And I was kind of, I got the door for her, and I said, "Oh, you got the group today?" She goes, "Yeah, we're not golfing today." And I said, "Oh, are the boys golfers?" And yeah, they're actually, it's not travel, but they do travel. There are tournaments and there are weekends where you play out of town. And I said, "How's that for you?" And she goes, "It's really expensive. It's so much money from a parental aspect of it. It's not an easy game to teach your kids how to play. It's an easy game when you learn, okay, hit the ball, and the guy who hits it fewer times than everybody else, that he wins. That's not hard. But learning the discipline of the game and other things. So the cost, maybe not so much in tennis, but with traveling and going to tournaments, maybe in Provo or in Ogden or Logan, or eventually you're going to go to Vegas probably. And the cost of sports at a young level is, travel baseball. There's so many different ways that you mentioned kids and opportunities in other places in the world that you've been. There's a problem because opportunity sometimes is restricted unless you have the money and the wealth to be able to provide it with your kids.
It is such a good point, because we get kids, like I said, I work with the kids that are beginning and intermediate kids. These kids that are real good players that will go on and play college ball, they have to go out of state to play in tournaments to get and face the level of competition that's going to help them be that good. Yeah. And it's extremely expensive. And all these things, like Steve, I don't think we never had travel leagues when we were young. And parents are putting out a lot of money. So we were lucky when we were kids. We just go play over the line and just hit and play, and it was cheap.
Yeah, I've heard parents say, "Listen, I'm going to invest in my child now," hoping, even like women's golf, there's a Title IX reward for a woman golfer that can get into college. There's not a whole lot of girls that qualified to get there in the first place, so it's a smaller field to choose from or select from. But the reward would be you get a college scholarship. So learn how to play golf or tennis or swim or whatever, and invest in the child now. And hopefully the reward on the other end is that they get an opportunity to at least have a partial or a full scholarship to go to a university and get the life skills that they need from the classes that they take and the major that they study in. So a lot of different ways to look at it. No one specific one is righter or wronger than the other, but I know my English isn't correct there. Just work with me, folks. It's okay. It's okay. But you get to see a lot of that, I'm sure, with your tennis and even from a weightlifting perspective. Kids that are training for certain sports, help me to be better at my specific sport by teaching me how to deadlift better or how to do my lunges without hurting myself. I don't want to hurt my back, but I do want to get strong.
One thing for Steve, I'm impressed he went back to school and finished up and moved on, because that's one big regret I have is by just taking for granted that college scholarship, because you brought up scholarships and stuff. We'll take it and use it and work on, getting a degree that something's going to help you in life. So
Thank you for mentioning that. And speaking of scholarships, so what happened in my life real quickly is, my dad, he was an attorney, and he had an annuity for my college tuition that he paid into every year. And that was how I was going to go to college. Well, I was lucky enough to get scholarships to play baseball in college. Then I went off into the pros. So then the opportunity comes to return to college, and this is at the University of Southern California. And this is, I somehow managed to talk my way into the school, and I have the opportunity to go there for 2 years, finish up. And everything's great, except I got to go to my dad and, hey, Dad, do you mind paying my tuition? And Dad was so great. And I was lucky because he had just started doing tort law. He teamed up with another attorney. So his practice was really doing well. But he said, I'm doing well enough that I can pay for your tuition. And I said, well, what about that annuity that you've been saving up for? You didn't have to use. He says, I'm going to give that to you when you get out of school. So that ended up being when I got out of school and I got married. That finally came to me. It was a huge bonus for me to be married and have something like $15,000, which was a bit of money in those days. But yeah, never needed it for college. But yeah, it was something that I wanted to do, and I just had the opportunity to do it. I was lucky. I was very fortunate to do that, and I'm very glad that I did.
Yep, absolutely. The scholarship, the money, the finances, everything like that, and turning it into a seed for the future for obvious reasons. Kenny, before we go, just we want to thank you first and foremost. But again, now you're just you're going to start enjoying life and go to some games. And do you have a bucket list?
I don't, but I sure need one.
Okay.
It'll probably involve more golfing than anything else. It's one thing I play. I still get that emotional reward because I can still hit a golf ball really well, and I've got good touch. And now that I can't play baseball or do anything else,
you are invited as my guest to stay at my daughter's bed and breakfast in New England. If you and your wife want to come out here and want to go to Fenway Park, we are halfway between Fenway Park and the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. We're a couple hours from Montreal, and we're a fairly fast train ride from New York City. So you want to come out here, and I could probably hook you up to spend some time with Bill Lee. So that's on the table. That's awesome. Is out there.
I think I'll set myself a fitness goal to get in shape and then come on out.
Yeah.
Have that carrot dangled there at the end of the summer, and I'd enjoy that. It'd be good to see you again, Steve.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, not only that, you might be able to have some zero altitude golf for you, and you might. I can only hit the ball.
No, I don't like that. I need an extra club or two.
Yeah.
Whenever I go back to the Bay Area to visit, it's like we go over to Bodega Bay and play golf, and it's like, what the heck? This normally is a 9-iron, now it's a 7-iron.
Yeah, I'm so weak.
They have a golf course at Bodega Bay.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Really?
We always thought that they buried elephants on the greens because you'd land on a green and it was humongous, but they're just such big undulating greens, and it's like, okay, I'm going to 4-putt this one.
It's like, I guess it's similar to Pebble Beach, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, no.
Overlooking the ocean, I'm
I
assuming.
got a chance to play Spyglass a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
which was spectacular. But even Poppy Hills, just a public course there, is just worth it. I'm not going to spend $500-$600 on a golf course. So
Right.
we have our limits.
Well, Kenny Clayton, it has been a trip down memory lane. I want to thank you so much for being your guest on Take 5 with Steven Travers. Harper will probably add this, but hey, fans out there, leave a comment, subscribe, tell us you like us. And hey, this is the great Kenny Clayton has had a chance to tell his story on Take 5 with Steven Travers. What do you think, Harper?
Well, I'm grateful for the experience of learning about a guy that paid his dues with baseball, had some great experiences from the time that he was very young through his high school days, obviously at BYU and in the minor leagues. Kenny Clayton, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. And as Steven said, folks, if you like the show, please like and subscribe. We also just want to say thank you for tuning in. This has been 100 Yards of Football, but the Take 5 show with Steven Travers. And today's guest, again, Kenny Clayton, former minor league player, obviously a BYU Cougar for life. And hopefully he'll be hitting a bunch of golf balls there in the East Coast and getting a chance to go to Cooperstown and or Fenway Park very, very soon. Kenny, thank you so much for being with us. We want to thank you for being with us as well. Thank you for watching Take 5 with